Thank you everyone for coming. It's a fantastic turnout, and thank you to the Community Council for putting on the event. I think it's really important for local democracy. I'm not at all surprised to see so many of you here. I was here campaigning on the High Street at the weekend, and we'd set up our stall, and actually within about 30 seconds someone came up to me and started shouting at me. And I thought, well, this is a good start. But she actually turned out to be a Labour voter. And the pattern continued, that people were very engaged. And it shows me that people's, perhaps more than many other places in this constituency, really is involved in politics and knows what's going on, and I'm very heartened by that. So, okay, it was fine to be shouted at in the street. I kind of expect that. That's what democracy and politics is all about. But look, the election campaign is hard work. I know it's hard work, and it should be hard work. My son, who's only 4, said to me this morning, Daddy, how's the election going? And I said, it's going great, it's going great. And he said, that's good, Daddy, that's good. But actually, is anyone alive who is older than you? I thought, okay, it's really showing on me, obviously. But look, honestly, it's about hard work, and I'm enjoying it immensely. And it should be about hard work, because this area has been overlooked for far too long, in my view. And we need someone here who will be a strong local champion for you. A backbench constituency MP who doesn't want to take a front bench role in his party, who will roll up his sleeves and fight for you, for your future, for your economy, for everyone, not just the Peoples, but the whole of DCT. And that's absolutely crucial. And why is it crucial? Because you face a real choice, perhaps the choice of a generation in a week's time. And it's a choice about where we go as a country, not just Scotland, but everyone living in these islands. And it's a choice, I think, between an open country, a country that works for the many and not the few, or it's a choice between a country that is closed down by a narrow, hard Tory Brexit. And this is a much bigger choice than independence. It's huge. And Mari's party and David's party want to obsess about independence. The Labour Party don't. We have a settled position of federalism. Okay? We've put the divisions of the past firmly in the past. And I ask you, next week, focus on that. Focus on the threat of hard Tory Brexit, because it will hurt the economy, it will hurt your jobs, it will hurt the pound in your pocket, it will hurt the young and the old. But it doesn't have to be like that. It is a straight choice in this election between Labour and Tory. These are the only parties that can form a government in Westminster. And I ask you, as you hear the debate tonight, think about everything in those terms, because that is the choice in front of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Parliamentary Peoples in 2013. I never thought I'd be standing here today running for Parliament. But I am here today because I could no longer sit back and watch as new divisions emerge in society and politics takes us down a path that I believe is truly regressive and dangerous. Here's how politics is tending to work these days in recent years. A politician comes along, puts himself on a platform and says, listen folks, I know that you're hurting, I know things seem bad, living standards are going down, it feels like you're working hard but you're not getting anywhere, everything seems unfair and it is unfair. I get that, but I've got the answer, and it's actually really quite simple. There is a malign foreign presence amongst us, or trying to get amongst us, and all we have to do is block, neutralise, eliminate this foreign thing, and that's the key to making everything better. And what's more, if you are a true patriot, then it is your duty, these politicians will say, to rally behind me as I move to eliminate this malign foreign presence. But here's the thing. Whether that malign foreign presence is framed as being the European Union, or migrants, or Tories, or Westminster, or Mexicans, or Muslims, or whatever it is, the politicians making those arguments are always preying on the worst aspects of human nature, and they're being illiberal. The Liberal Democrats are the only unequivocally pro-UK, pro-Europe party in this election, the only properly internationalist, anti-nationalist party. That matters not just ideologically, not just in the sense of me being some liberal that loves holding everyone close and not wanting to push anyone away. It also matters pragmatically and practically. Brexit is going to hurt. It's going to damage our economy and erode your living standards. The Centre for Economics and Business Research estimates that if we don't get an open trade agreement with the EU, then the UK's service sector is going to, its exports will fall by 15%. That's just one example of one part of our economy. So it's going to hurt. So that's one form of nationalism that got a victory last year, and it's going to hurt all of us. Then we have the other nationalism that we're subject to, Scottish nationalism. The SNP's answer to Brexit is, of course, as it is to everything, to break up the UK. So its answer to the risk, the uncertainty, the downside of Britain leaving a 40-year-old social, partial political and trading union is to remove Scotland from a hundreds of years old, completely integrated social, political, trading, economic, monetary and fiscal union. But for some reason we're expected to believe that that's not risky. And in fact, the Centre for Economic and Business Research, as I mentioned earlier, estimates that an independent Scotland would have to cut government spending to the tune of 15% of our GDP, with that removal of spending once it feeds into the wider economy, ultimately leading to a 25% fall in Scottish GDP overall. So for comparison, just to benchmark that, an economic depression, not a recession, a depression, is defined as a fall in GDP of at least 10%. Imagine what life would be like here now had we just experienced our economy contracting by 25%. Would I be taking my kids to primary school, as I do every day, only to have to bring them back home again because it's the third or fourth month in a row that teachers have been paid in IOUs? Quite possibly. And what if you or your family member gets seriously sick? You go to your GP, if there's still a GP to go and see, and you refer to the PGH because the GP's found something that isn't right. They send you away for a scan. You go down there and you get there just to find that the big fancy piece of scanning equipment that costs £40,000 every quarter to service hasn't been serviced. It's not in use anymore. So I shudder to think what might have happened had there been a yes vote in 2014 and nationalism won then. And as always, it is always the most vulnerable people. It is always the most vulnerable people who suffer when these things win. So my key message tonight, which some of you won't like, is that when nationalism wins, we all lose. We need to stop nationalism winning. And you can do your part to stop that by voting for me next week. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mary McCallan. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today as your SNP representative. I appreciate that when I'm asking for your vote, I'm asking you to put your trust in me. So as a start, I think it would only be apt for me to give you a short introduction of myself. My name's Mary, as I said. I grew up in Biggar and attended school there before leaving to study law at Glasgow University. During that time I was lucky enough to participate in the Erasmus scheme and lived, worked and studied in Belgium for a time, looking at various aspects of European law. Following my graduation, I worked in politics before returning to university to do my diploma in professional legal practice. And during that time, I was given the Law Society Award for Work in Human Rights. I am now a trainee commercial solicitor in commercial property. It's my most recent department that I've worked in. And when I'm not working, I help my partner run his beef and sheep farm near Sanquhar, where we now live. So I hope that's given you a little rundown. Politically, I am a committed social democrat. I believe strongly that a strong economy and a fair society have to be mutually inclusive in hand. I'm a committed European. I believe that Scotland's future is as an open, fair, internationalist European country. So it's an absolute privilege to be your candidate in my home constituency. This is a constituency which is so rich in agriculture, in food and drink, in manufacturing, in culture, and these are all important components of a visitor economy. But we are undoubtedly moving into an unparalleled period of change, and I fear that our rural economy is at risk. It's at risk because of the extreme form of Brexit, which is now being pursued by the UK government. Beyond Brexit, I worry that the most vulnerable in our society are set to suffer They're going to suffer more as the Conservatives continue to roll out their austerity programme. So, in this election, a Tory MP, particularly one which is part of the UK government, I'm afraid to say they will only ever do what the now discredited Prime Minister tells them that they have to do. The Labour Party, although we have much in common, they are too weak and they are too divided to be elected. And the SNP are the only party who are strong enough to be an opposition to what is undoubtedly going to be a Conservative majority down south. So please put your trust in me. Give me your questions tonight. I know our chair said that this is about asking us questions, but I am also keen to know what all of you think the big issues are in Tweeddale and across the constituency. So I'll not go in any further and we can just get started.
Thank you very much, Callum, and it's a privilege for me to participate in these hustings once again. Having done so before, I know that here in Peebles there is always this level of interest and that we're in for a lively evening. I was very proud at the last general election, actually, that the turnout in this Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale constituency was nearly 77%, and that was one of the highest turnouts in the whole of the United Kingdom. So people here are interested, and that's proved again by attendance this evening. I offer three propositions as to why people should vote for me, and I will be succinct because I agree with Mary that it's about your questions, what you have to say, which is important tonight. Obviously, I've had the honour to be the MP for this area for 12 years, and I'm standing on my record as a local MP. In that period, I've helped well over 1,000 surgeries. I've helped thousands of people with individual issues or take forward national and local concerns, and I'm committed to be as accessible and hard-working as I have been in the past 12 years if I was fortunate enough to be re-elected. I'm also standing on a platform of no to another independence referendum. And let's be clear that the proposition of an independence referendum in Scotland is absolutely real. Because although Mary didn't mention it, it is one of the key commitments in the SNP manifesto launched on Tuesday, and to have a referendum as early as autumn next year. So my position is quite clear. We said no in 2014, we meant it. We were told that it was once in a generation, and that's what it should be. And I'm absolutely clear that if independence and the threat of it was taken off the table, that would benefit particularly the economy of the Scottish borders because of the uncertainty that is causing, and that we would be able to move on, particularly in the Scottish Parliament, and see the Scottish Parliament, Scottish Government, focus on issues that are really important in Scotland, like health and education, where we now see the once great Scottish education system being called into question. And my third proposition is to work to get the best possible deal in Brexit. I don't recognise these terms, hard and soft Brexit. What I recognise is getting a really good deal for Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom. And that does mean getting the best possible access to the single market. Of course it does, and that's what we want to achieve. But it also means taking advantage of opportunities that will arise as a result of Brexit. I voted to remain, but the United Kingdom as a whole voted to leave, and that's what's happening now. But there are opportunities. One of those, for example, in this area, is reshaping the common agricultural policy. For my entire period in local politics, either in the Scottish Parliament or Westminster, people have complained to me about the common agricultural policy because it's a policy that applies the same rules to local farmers as it does to Spanish tobacco growers and Greek olive growers. What we've got now is the chance to reshape that policy, to make it more in keeping with local needs. So there are opportunities as well in Brexit. So that's my pitch, my record, saying no to another independence referendum and working for the best possible deal on Brexit. Thank you.
Inequality. the Liberal Democrats, have a detailed plan that we put in place to reverse a lot of the in-work benefit cuts that have been kicked in the last few years, and also reverse all of the planned benefit cuts that are planned for the next parliamentary term. Now, the Institute for Fiscal Studies actually looked at our manifesto and costed it properly, and the Conservatives plan $9 billion worth of welfare cuts in the coming years. The IFS found that the Liberal Democrats are going to reverse all of those cuts, all $9 billion, and that's looking at both our tax plans as well as our welfare plans. They contrasted this with the Labour Party, and I'm sorry to bring this up, because I know we had a hustings the other night, and I brought this point up, and Doug looked at me like he was saying, why are you getting on at me? But it's an important point to make that the IFS also looked at Labour's manifesto, and they found that Labour's only going to reverse £2 billion of those £9 billion plan cuts, so there will still be £7 billion of cuts. So for people who are on lower income and in lower income households, this is a really important point. They've had in-work benefit cuts, child benefit cuts and so on kicking in recent years. We haven't had wages increasing in line with inflation, so your wages have been going down in real terms. And there's another important point here, which is the wages that public sector staff have been subject to. The Conservatives at Westminster
surplus and then reducing the debt. The Tories have missed all of their own fiscal targets while pushing some of the most vulnerable people in our society to the brink. So in Scotland, the SNP, we reject austerity. We believe that you can grow and invest your way out of deficit and eventually out of debt. From one of the fantastic examples of making money circulate better is by investing in our people. In an interview the other day, Mr. Mundell said that work was the way out of poverty. Now, to me, that sounds there's some truth in it, but it sounds a bit Victorian. I believe that the way out of poverty and to help people circulate money more fully is education. So the Scottish National Party, we invest in education from early years. We provide 16 hours of childcare to all 3 and 4-year-olds and all vulnerable 2-year-olds. We have free school meals for primary 1 to 3, which the Tories manifesto is going to cut down south. We are investing in our pupil equity fund to close the attainment gap, and the Scottish Borders are receiving that this year as well. And of course, tuition is free in Scotland, which the Liberals helped the Tories to scrap down south. So I would say that the way that you make money circulate more fairly is to give everybody a chance in life to contribute to society, and I think education is the core of that. The second question was, is it reasonable to live off £10.50 an hour? That is the real living wage. I think that in our manifesto we're calling for the national minimum wage, which is around £8, I think, to be brought up to the real living wage, and I think that is absolutely important. If you can't live on it, why on earth would it be the minimum wage? What was the third question again?
pensions.
Oh, pensions. Are your pensions safe? I'm afraid that the answer to that is no. I'm afraid that we are looking at a Conservative Party in the UK government who were so arrogant and so sure that they were going to be re-elected on a landslide that they have felt that they could act with impunity. Now, it is often considered that the older population vote for the Conservatives, and what I mean by impunity is that they have included in their manifesto some extremely damaging policies for pensioners. They want to remove the triple lock on state pensions, which incidentally Age Scotland described as being essential for... Am I going on too long?
Yep.
Well, they want to scrap the triple law. If you just let me finish the pensions, I will move on. Which Age Scotland described as being essential in avoiding pensioner poverty. They want to means test winter fuel allowance, and they want to impose the dementia tax, which makes old people have to pay for their social care. Both that is free in Scotland, I am proud to say. So if anyone's got questions for Mr Mundell, I would ask, what is the cap on the dementia tax?
I'm very happy to stick to the devolved reserve split, but these issues are quite blurred these days, and certainly, if we're going to have a statement that education is the way out of poverty, then the Scottish National Party government in Scotland have to be held to account for their record on education, and it is a dreadful record, which on the basis of international standards has seen Scotland plummet in those international league tables. And those are facts. They're not propositions from me or other politicians. They are facts. And I believe that is down to the fact that so much time has been focused on the Constitution that not enough time has been given to education. And also on the issue of the split between devolved and responsibilities. During the course of this Parliament, all responsibility for disability benefits will come to the Scottish Parliament. So within the next 3 years. But wouldn't you have thought then that in the SNP manifesto there would be some mention of what those benefits might be, what shape they would take, how they would be dealt with? So we hear plenty of criticism about what the Westminster government is doing in England, and of course the social care and the winter payments apply in England only, but we hear nothing about what the disability benefits that people in Scotland will receive in 3 years' time. That is what I think. That is when you launch your manifesto for an election period of 5 years, I would have thought that you would have set out what you were going to do about disability benefits. I've been proud to have played a part in a government that has devolved powers to the Scottish Parliament, but I see no evidence or willingness to use those powers. Now, on pensions, I agree, it is a difficult balance to strike between older and younger people. There has to be a contract across the generations, because younger people are paying taxes which fund pensions. The triple lock, 2.5% inflation wage rise, that is guaranteed to 2020. Beyond that, the Conservative proposal is that pensions would continue to increase, but it would be inflation and wage related. And I believe that is a fair compromise.
Nothing on food banks?
Food banks? Food banks are an unfortunate part of society because people find themselves in crisis. Really good food banks, what they do is that they give people the pathway out of that crisis. They direct them to benefits that they can receive, the support that they can receive. I think people need support at a moment of crisis. There are a number of ways in which that can be provided. Sometimes in the past it's been provided informally, sometimes now it's provided more formally. I believe that we should welcome the fact that people are supported in moments of crisis.
Douglas, please.
Thank you again, okay, well, look, the Labour Party, as you will all know, has got a fully costed manifesto. It's a long document, and I would urge you all to read it because there's a lot of really good stuff in there, some of which has come up through the questions. So I'm just trying to do this without my spec. Oh, my apologies. Can you hear better now? Okay, thank you. Look, despite what John says, I think everybody here knows, and whatever you think of Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party at the moment, and I think we're going to win this election, we are, across the United Kingdom, the anti-austerity party. There's no doubt about that. Whether you're talking about Scotland, Wales, England or Northern Ireland, if that's what you want, if you want to get rid of austerity, then you have to vote Labour. We have got a national social care strategy in our manifesto. That's pumping billions of pounds into social care. We know what the Tories will do to social care. They're coming after you on the winter fuel allowance, on the cap, everything, on the triple lock. They're coming after you. Theresa May has made that clear. Her manifesto was a shambles 4 days after it was launched. I've never seen anything like that in British politics, apart from the debate last night, which you didn't turn up. Now, on corporation tax, again, we will lower that. It's I think the lowest in Europe at the moment, and it needs to go back up again. And you can again pump billions into the economy from that, and it needs to happen. It used to be at 28%. We're proposing putting it up to 26%. I think it's at 16 or something like that at the moment. On automation, no one else touched on this, but I'll tell you something. The trade unions, Unite, who I've worked for many years, are dealing with this. We think it is really important because your jobs will be under threat. So we have to know what we're going to do on automation going forward. But one sector of society, the trade unions, part of the labour movement, are dealing with that. We're looking at that. On the minimum wage, we have got a policy of £10 an hour. I think this is really important for young people. In fact, it's important right across the board. But £10 an hour for the minimum wage. That's cast iron in our manifesto. Now, I've got to say also, I don't want to just appear to be attacking David, that isn't fair, but the SNP have cut 1.5 billion from local government in recent years. 1.5 billion, okay? That's a really serious cut to local government, and it can't go on. They're also planning to take 1 billion away from the NHS in the next 4 years. Again, a really serious cut. You have to bear this in mind. And finally, on food banks, look, David Mundell opened the food bank in Dumfries. I've already challenged him this week on that. It is absolutely disgraceful. People go to food banks because they are starving and they are broken by what the Tories and the Liberal Democrats have done to us over the last 7 years. And it absolutely cannot go on. And what I would say to you as Scots is that in this country we should not have food banks, but we shouldn't have them anywhere. We shouldn't have them in England, we shouldn't have them in Wales, Northern Ireland, anywhere. It is absolutely disgraceful, and we need to put that firmly in the past. But you can do that by electing a Labour government. That is a simple choice for you. Thank you.
We're not going to test your memories quite as much this time. Just one question, and it's on farming. Given the potential loss of £500 million from Scottish farming, and the detrimental impact of tariff barriers on exports and the loss of export markets, what plans do you have to protect Scottish farming in the long term? And I'm going to ask Mary to go first on this.
Thank you very much. Happy to speak on this subject. I live with a farmer for whom the prospect of Brexit is one of the most frightening things that has happened to his business. It's a business that's been in his family for generations, and they are all deeply concerned. There was a House of Lords report published at the beginning of May which stated that farmers are set to suffer a quadruple whammy effect from a hard or no deal Brexit. The effects of that being losing the 500 million consumers that we currently trade with tariff-free. Our goods risk being priced out of the market by cheap imports. We no longer have the pool of workers that the free movement of people provides. So you can see that getting Theresa May says that a no deal is better than a bad deal. Well, I'm sorry, but no deal is the worst deal at all for farmers, because if we fall to World Trade Organisation rules, some of the most punitive tariff barriers exist there. So in terms of what we want to do, I think it's first of all very important to make sure that the powers over agriculture are immediately repatriated to the Scottish Parliament. There can be no suggestion that these powers will rest at the UK level. If that were to happen, it would be an affront to the devolution settlement on certain aspects, but Scottish farming is a very niche pursuit, and it matters that the policy is driven here. I'm worried about farming. The UK Agriculture Minister, George Eustice, has said that there is no justification for the continuation of the direct payment following 2020. You'll not meet many farmers who say that the subsidy is absolutely essential to their business. They don't want to be presented as being begging bowl businessmen, but what they couldn't survive is having that pulled from under their feet. So we need to make sure that Scottish farming is sustainable, that the powers of it, if there's a time outside the EU, that they are at the Scottish Parliament. But I've got to say that my feeling is that we must continue to be part of the single market so that we can continue to have success in an industry which is so important to the Scottish economy.
Thank you, I agree. Farming is a vitally important industry, not just to the borders and Fries and Galloway, but the whole of Scotland. The industry needs as much certainty as possible, and that's why in the Conservative Manifesto we guarantee that £500 million of funding for the next 5 years whilst we leave the EU, so that in the period in which we develop our own system of support, farmers know that their funding is certain. And I think that is a measure that I've found farmers across Tweeddale and right across this constituency have very much welcomed. Now, we do have an opportunity. I said in my opening remarks, I think this is one area in which Brexit provides real opportunity. We've been bound by a common agricultural policy system that has ensured that the rules apply, as I said earlier, to Spanish tobacco farmers or Greek olive growers that are applying to hill farmers here in the borders, and that just isn't on. So we will have the opportunity to shape it, and I want farmers to shape it. I have ideas. I mean, I don't believe that a system that pays people for the land they have rather than the production that they achieve is the right one, because we see large landowners just getting a lot of money for not doing very much. I think there is a real opportunity to make those changes. And of course, powers will return to the Scottish Parliament. There is no suggestion of a power grab at Westminster. I can absolutely assure you that there are not people sitting in Defra in London looking to grab power over hill farming in Scotland. They know that the expertise to deal with that rests here in Scotland. But we do have to have rules that apply across the UK. Otherwise, we will, in leaving the EU, and I want us to have access to the single market. I made that very clear, and I think we can achieve that. I think it's in our interest, but most importantly, I think it's in the EU interest. But what we don't want to do in leaving the EU is create additional barriers in our own country. Because for farming and agriculture, as for all other businesses, the single most important market is the rest of the UK. And we must remember that. So we can't have rules that would have different livestock health or transport. In the southern part of this constituency, the most important market for livestock is in Longtown, 1 mile south of 1 mile south of the border. If you had different rules, Mary, in Scotland, it would mean that you would need paperwork to take livestock to a market in England. So let's not go down that route.
Okay.
Douglas, please.
I think I got it first. I was on my feet first. Okay, look, I've been saying this week on the Common Agricultural Policy that it's by no means perfect, but it's been around since 1962. And what it's been doing in that time is pumping a lot of subsidies into farms that will very soon not be viable because of Brexit. Now, that's a really serious point. Now, 52% of our trade is with the European Union. Okay? Now, David says the subsidies are guaranteed. I don't think they are. I think what he's really saying is they're guaranteed for the next Parliament or until 2020, something like that. But what happens thereafter, we do not know. And they need to be replaced. There needs to be some future guarantee or something put in place, because otherwise a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, their incomes and their livelihoods. And what Labour has said in its manifesto is we will have a fund to alleviate rural poverty. And no one else is saying that. It's an important point. So I think we do want tariff-free access. That's important too. We're probably all agreed on that, at least the candidates are. But look, is David Davis agreed on that? Is Liam Fox agreed on that? And David can say what he wants about access to the single market, tariff-free or otherwise. But there are people in his party who want a hard Brexit, and I fear that is the way we're going, whether David likes it or not. And that is why you have to elect a Labour MP here, because it is only Labour that can form another government in Westminster that will kill hard Brexit stone dead. Now, the SNP can't do that unless Mary and Nicola Sturgeon are planning to invade England sometime soon. So I think what we need, actually, is a people's Brexit, okay? With cooperation and partnership with Europe. You know you will get that with the Labour Party. You do not know that you'll get it, not by any means, with the Tories. Thank you.
Yes, this time, John.
Thank you. Just to pick up on a point that Douglas made there at the end, I have a sneaky suspicion that Jeremy Corbyn might actually be a secret leaver. So I'm not actually sure how committed he would be to keeping as close to the EU as we possibly can. Just a few points. This is an incredibly important issue for this constituency, for a rural constituency like this. Douglas mentioned that 52% of our trade is with the EU. When it comes to agricultural products, 80% of UK agricultural products go to the EU. It's an incredibly important issue. It's estimated that 60% of UK farm income on average comes from EU subsidies, and it's also estimated that 90% of UK farms would be at risk of collapse without those subsidies. So it's an incredibly important issue. As well as the subsidies from the EU, there are other dangers present from us withdrawing from the European Union. The UK entering into new trade deals with countries that hold to lower animal welfare standards and food standards and environmental standards that we do in order to make their products more competitive than ours, which would put pressure on our farmers and our market to actually lower our standards down to those levels in order to be able to compete. So if you're interested in animal welfare, if you're concerned about the environment, then you should be concerned about it.
Will you support the United Nations Global Nuclear Weapons Ban Treaty currently being finalised in New York? And we come first to David.
I'm opposed to the proliferation of nuclear weapons, and I want to see a nuclear-free world. I think that is what we all do. But I'm going to be quite honest, and I know that it's not popular with a number of people in this audience. I am for renewing Trident. I do not believe, and I'm very open about that. And if people don't share that view, that's what an election is about, because there are other candidates who have a different view and a different approach. I believe that it still remains a very dangerous and difficult world, and that it would be foolish and unwise to give up our nuclear deterrent without having clarity that we were definitely not going to have nuclear weapons anywhere in the world. I don't believe in unilateralism. I believe that multilateralism is the way forward. Of course, I would hope that the United Kingdom could sign up to UN initiatives. I think it is absolutely the best when we are all united on those. But let's not be unrealistic. We are living in a very difficult and challenging environment with some very difficult world leaders. I, for example, am very, very disappointed to hear that President Trump may repudiate the climate change treaty agreed in Paris, in which the UK government is committed to. So we have to recognise the international environment in which we are operating. But I, for the purpose of your choice at the election, I am a multilateralist.
Thank you. Douglas, please.
Look, again, something very simple to say about this. There's a leader of one party who has opposed nuclear weapons, I think at least for 3 to 4 decades. Jeremy Corbyn has been stripping that as a settled policy forever, and if I were your MP, that is the stance I would take without any shadow of a doubt, that I would be opposed to nuclear weapons.
John.
Thank you. I do have some sympathy with Douglas because my party as well tends to be split on this issue. Our party policy is that we would renew Trident, but at less cost than it's currently meant to cause. We would have less ships and not a continuous at-sea deterrent. But the important point is that the deterrent is still there. So that's the party policy. My view on this is that I think, like most people, I would absolutely be in favour of multilateral disarmament. I would not be in favour of a country like the UK unilaterally disarming, however, for two reasons. One, people don't actually realise, but we're about to head into a very unstable period in world history. I believe that what you can call the Western liberal consensus is coming under threat just now. The European Union is breaking down. It's not that the UK is just leaving. Us leaving is actually the breakdown of the European Union. We've got Donald Trump in the White House, an incredibly unstable character who's supposed to be the leader of the free world. We've got other countries like Russia asserting themselves again. So that's one reason. The second reason is actually quite simple, and that's if a country like the UK were to unilaterally disarm, it would actually increase the probability of there being some form of nuclear conflagration somewhere in the world at some point. That's the nature of deterrence. That's how it works. Now you know how these big nuclear boats work, right? They've got a safe in them that the captain accesses. If they lose all communication with Whitehall, there's a nuclear war. There's a safe with a letter in it that the Prime Minister has written with instructions to the captain of that boat on what to do. Now those instructions, we never know what those instructions say. But let's say I was the Prime Minister and I write on that letter, under no circumstances must you use this weapon. If you don't hear from Whitehall within 3 months, continue to patrol until such a time as you no longer are able to, and then find a safe port and disembark there. Now I could write that in that note if I were Prime Minister, but the weapon would still be effective because it's acting as a deterrent, because no one else knows that I've written that, so it's never going to be used. The opposition side, those who take a view that they may be an aggressor as a nuclear nation. Don't know that. That's how deterrence works. So I'm not in favour of unilateral disarmament. I'm in favour of multilateral disarmament, and the continuation of Trident, but on a reduced cost basis, seems to be the reasonable way forward for the UK.
Well, I am a fair woman. I don't often get angry, but I tell you what, nuclear weapons make me angry, and it is clear from the answers of these three men that the SNP are the only party who do not support Trident nuclear weapons housed on the Clyde. They are immoral, they are expensive, and they are singularly ineffective in defending us from the threats that we face as a modern country. If you think about the NHS cyber attack that happened a couple of weeks ago, if you think about the Manchester tragedy, what good were nuclear weapons in that? They do absolutely nothing to protect us from modern threats. And I'll pick up on that use of the word deterrent. If you're not going to fire it, why are you spending billions of pounds investing in it whilst children are using food banks, whilst they are being pushed into poverty? Yeah. And if you do fire that, that is the end of the world as we know it. So don't let Douglas Beattie fool you. I'm sure the man has good intentions, but his party are pro-nuclear weapons. The SNP are the only party who can stand here and say that we would sign that agreement, that we will take every single step that we can to make sure that nuclear weapons are removed from the Clyde, and SNP MPs will never vote for anything that facilitates the renewal of Trident.
We have different arrangements for social care, and it's not proposed by the Conservatives, or indeed I think in any of the other manifestos, to markedly change those arrangements.
You, as MP, will be voting in the Westminster Parliament for that particular policy, and I want to know what your response is to my question in that context, and each of the others who will be voting in that.
We'll be voting in part of the consideration of that policy, because there are rules now in relation to matters that apply just in England. I think what the policy is seeking to do is seeking to find a way of funding social care, and it is identified that there is need to find additional funding for social care, whilst at the same time looking to ensure that people don't have to give up all of their assets. And in fact, what the proposal means in England, which doesn't apply in Scotland, is that the baseline for assets would be taken up from 23,500 to 100,000. I don't think that there is a need for an introduction of an insurance scheme. I think if we can get the balance right, then we can provide the dignity and care that people need, both here in Scotland and across the whole of the UK.
Thank you. I think the gentleman actually touches on what's going to be one of the most important questions that we're going to face in the next 10 to 20 years. What Theresa May announced a couple of weeks ago and then quickly backtracked on was a rather cack-handed attempt to try and find a non-state system for trying to pay for this very expensive social care that we do need, that all of our older people need, and that we're all going to need as we get older. She was looking for a market-led approach to that wouldn't cost the state any money, and seemed to be picking some numbers out of thin air, and it just didn't work, so she backtracked quickly. It seems clear to me that over the next 10 years, at some point, someone's going to have to come up with something big, a kind of New Deal type arrangement on this. And I agree that I think it's going to have to be a social collective arrangement that works for everyone. And that's actually going to involve paying more tax. We can't just keep cutting tax. We would put 1 pence on income tax in the rest of the UK to go directly into social care and NHS as well. That would be £600 million per year. We would put 1% on income tax in Scotland that would go into education, and some of that would go into mental health, boosting mental health capabilities as well. But I do think we need to kind of a proper look at this. So perhaps a commission that sits down and takes a proper examined look at it and then works out what this new deal is for society, what's the new social contract that we all enter into, and it is going to involve a bit of tax increases. And if you look at tax over the last 30 years, we've had continuous reductions in tax. I mean, income tax in the mid-1980s, during the height of Thatcherism, the starting rate of income tax was 30 pence. It's now a third less than that. So corporation tax has fallen significantly as well. So corporation tax in France just now is 33%. It's 19% just now here. It's due to fall to 17% in the next 2 years. So we can't just keep reducing tax because it's popular. At some point, we're going to have to man up and have a new system, a new deal, a new social contract that we all agree to. We pay a bit more and we look after our elderly properly.
Thank you. Well, John talks of a new social contract. I don't think we need a new social contract. We have it. It's called the National Health Service. The SNP have kept the National Health Service in public hands, and we've kept it free at the point of need. We are investing record amounts in the health service, Douglas. Yes, we are. We have. Douglas is talking about cuts. We're investing £13 billion in our NHS. That is allowing us to have free personal care for the elderly, free prescriptions, free eye tests. And all of these things are, I'm afraid, what people down south are going to be losing with the Conservatives. And all the while, the Tories are presiding over down south what is being described by the Red Cross as a humanitarian crisis. Our National Health Service is one of the best performing in the UK, and that is because we've chosen to invest in it rather than cut it to the bone.
And I think both the Liberal Democrats and to some degree the SNP are well-meaning on this. But the truth is, what Labour has in its manifesto again, and time again, I'm standing in front of you and I'm telling you what's in the manifesto because it is there in black and white. There's absolutely nothing in the Conservative manifesto, and I think most of you, whether you're Conservatives or not, will know that. What we are proposing is a social care system to sit alongside the NHS. That's a national system, that's not just for Scotland. And I think the answer to the question, forgive me, I can't remember who asked it, thank you, is that in old age there should be no difference. People should be treated exactly the same in old age as they're treated at any other time in their life. And of course the principle of the Labour Party, our founding principle, is the principle of universality. So we pool our resources across society. And that has to be the case going forward again. But again, you need a party that is an anti-austerity party. And you will get that with the Labour Party. Now, just going to the Tory manifesto once more, I have to say this. The Tory party manifesto and what's in it just leaves the Tories looking like an absolutely shambolic threat to the future of millions of pensioners. There's no getting away from that, because I say it again, they're coming for you on the triple lock. They're coming for you on the winter fuel allowance, and they're coming for you on the dementia tax. And all of you, no matter your age in this room tonight or in this society, can stop that by voting Labour. Thank you.
As a young person, probably not that different in age, I, like you, have grown up with the European Union. Free movement is part of who we are, it's part of how we saw our future, and unfortunately that future has been ripped from under our feet. So, David, you say you want to guarantee the rights of citizens here just now. You're the only one on this panel who formed part of the UK government. You could have done that, but instead you've decided to use them as a bargaining chip, and it's completely unfair because, like this gentleman, they are our friends, they are our neighbours, they are our families, and it's unacceptable. So I want to maintain as much as I can as our relationship with the EU. I think that's only reasonable when 62% of the people who live in this country voted to stay in the European Union. Schengen is one of them. The Erasmus scheme that I mentioned before is another. So yeah, that has my complete support.
Thank you. I think Mario's maybe slightly confused about Schengen there. We're not actually in Schengen just now. So, I'm obviously the most pro-EU candidate here tonight. I represent a party that doesn't see leaving the European Union as an absolute done deal yet. We can still have the potential to give the people of Britain a chance to stop this happening. So, when it comes to free movement of people, obviously I'm all for free movement of people. I don't like borders and barriers. We absolutely need to have the rights of EU citizens in this country guaranteed as soon as possible. That should have been done from the start. It would have been
So the way that people in this country vote really matters to me. Scotland voted 62%, as the lady in the back said, to remain in the European Union. And I believe that should be given expression. Since then, we've had a vote for the Scottish parliamentary election, at which the SNP were returned to government on the largest constituency share of the vote in the history of the Scottish Parliament, on a manifesto which said that if we were taken out of the EU against our will, we would have the opportunity to hold another second independence referendum to choose whether that was a route we wanted to take. This has been compounded by a vote in the Scottish part of the Scottish Parliament. So I believe that when the terms of Brexit are clear, the people of Scotland should be given a choice on the type of country that we want to be, whether we stay and go down with the sinking ship Little Britain, or whether we become an independent country and a European country once again. On the Liberal Democrats' position, the idea that referendums are only divisive when it's the people of Scotland's future that's at stake is utterly it's absolutely hypocrisy, and it is the position that we have come to expect of the Liberal Democrats, I'm afraid. Thank you.
There's one person who disregards the will of the people of Scotland, and that's Nicola Sturgeon. People in Scotland don't want another independence referendum, and they will have the opportunity to give expression to that view next Thursday. Now, I respect the result of both referendums. In 2014, we voted to remain part of the United Kingdom. In 2016, we had a United Kingdom-wide referendum where the question was whether the United Kingdom remained in the EU, and people across the United Kingdom voted to leave. Now, I voted to remain, but what I didn't do, I didn't vote on the basis that 3 hours after the result was declared, Nicola Sturgeon would seek to hijack my vote to reopen the independence question. So I reiterate, Mary has, and I'm pleased that she has, because she didn't in her opening remarks,
confirm that it is the SNP policy to have another independence referendum within this Parliament. My position is not to have that referendum. It is actually to bring people together, and that's what I think the Scottish Government, and people across Scotland, and certainly people across Scotland would want, to come together as a country to negotiate the best possible deal. And yes, I want a free trade deal with the EU to give us best possible access to that single market. That's what I will dedicate myself to achieving in this Parliament. What I also will, though, is not countenance a divisive independence referendum during the most important negotiations this country has entered into post-war.